There it is. And I've got the ding and the red light. So I'm recording. So
Okay.
we're recording a call with the mighty Mike Mason. And I think this call is going to be about the Title 28 USC Rule 1, 1986 combined law about equity by this U.S. law about communist civil code, mainly focusing on inspiration and faith and prayer, wellness and entertainment, family newsletters, and special uh, discussion about maybe the 45 communist goals as read into the congressional record of 1963. Does that sound inviting or not? I think it does.
Well, it's historical evidence of how we managed to get so far off track, and no mistake. It was all intentional, and as our history is evidence of it, uh, some of the dictionaries that we talk about, which I usually refer back to Noah Webster's, has the definitions for some of the terms that are utilized, like civil and law and republic and democracy and all these words. They're very specifically identified and defined according to Noah Webster's rendition of the change in the sovereignty in this country. And I'll give you an example. For instance, the word republic. If you go to the Noah Webster's 1828 dictionary, you will discover that, and I'm gonna wing this because I'm not looking at my dictionary. Um, it specifically identifies a republic as a system where the sovereignty is in the Senate. It's
Hmm.
actually in the government. It's not in the people.
Huh.
And so uh, when you look at that word to see where it came from, the example is Rome. Well,
Yeah.
that's not the several states. That's a previous history of a previous country where the reptilian overlords were in complete control through the Senate. And it just so happens I had some previous lifetimes in that particular area, which I was given that info. But the point I'm getting at is that because of my involvement in some of the things that we're dealing with right now, these little pieces of our history are relevant so that you can see how it began, what it was supposed to be, and what it's turned into, and who the people were and what they are now. And this word citizen is a very powerful word. It goes back a long way in the Earth's history as far as people are concerned. But this is the only time in history, in this history, that the people actually acquired sovereignty in their person. The government we're now dealing with is dying on the vine, and it was birthed pretty much at the time that our Constitution was being written, and the principles behind it will lead us ultimately to a point where the people in their sovereignty have the capacity and the ability to do things in their private side that are natural things that were never intended to be controlled by another individual. Now, when you're doing things that are harmful to the environment, then you're harmful to everybody, including yourself. And we're in that transition right now where the things that were harmful at one point not only will not be operated or not be enforced by people, generally, either public or private, but people will get to the point where they're no longer dependent upon it and are operating in a whole different world. And the private side is where this thing is going to be exposed. Now, this information about Title 28 and this Rule 1 at 1986, we're right in the middle of a transition period here into the civil codes, which actually were little by little were implemented back in the late 1800s when some of the constitutions that were coming into being right then before the revolution, before the civil rights issues and the Civil War. So Title 28, it did it in Rule 1, 1986. It combined law and equity, and it did it under a civil code, and it says it right in the rule. So the civil code is civil law, civil rule has to do with a guy named Justinian. He wrote the first civil code, Rome. So, and the word justice is about equity. It's not about titles. It's not about your individual sovereign rights. It's about contracts between two consenting individuals or not, depending upon what you've signed in your life. And so the common law is now here in this code combined with equity under a civil rule, which is controlled, manipulated, and that's where they come up with the word civil rights. Well, if you're in a civil rights capacity, you're operating according to the government's rules, not common law. And all these little pieces are, if you have an aptitude for understanding the difference between what your rights should be and what the system says your rights are, as you go through these definitions that are laid out here, like these 45 communist goals, they were read into the Congressional Record, 1963, and there's 45 of them. There's a long list. Uh, whether you want to take the time to go through and look at each one of these or not, um, they're all pertinent, and including the 10 planks, which were specific to this country, as well as the 45 goals. Number one, just for instance, the U.S. Acceptance of, of coexistence as the only alternative to atomic war. Um, that's pretty interesting. Why do we need atomic war in the first place? Uh, that's something that Mother Nature doesn't like, and the people definitely don't like it if they happen to be in the middle of it. Then you get into the U.S. willingness to capitulate in preference to engaging in atomic war. Oh, they want the U.S. to stand down. You see, at the time in our life, the U.S. was pretty much the military power on the planet, and what most people don't realize or don't have an understanding about is that there was a group behind all of this, the war efforts, which is why they were trying to create this national military and then send it all over the world to take part in capitulating other countries and their principles, if they had any, that would coincide with the way the U.S. government and the underlings behind it were intending to put all their controls in place. And I'm not going to go down through this whole list, but the you get down and we start looking at the 10 planks themselves. Uh, these are the ones that are very pointed with respect to what has already happened and taken place. And I'll list a couple of them here and let you get the idea. Number one, it's the abolition of private property in land and the application of all the rents of land to public purpose. Now, that's a pretty interesting statement there because that's not how our system was set up. Uh, Private land was the key to the individual's prosperity, ability to live and survive, and also was the number one thing that the government had no power or authority over. And the the things that were vested in the government, the U.S. side, are very specific. They're all listed in Article 1, Section 8. And if it's not there, if there's no uh, leak, I'll say, outside of the system allowing something to take place that isn't authorized, then Congress can't cite that. Then not something they can do. But, of course, you and I both know that there's problems with the enforcement side, which is the people. And the entire system, by the time that this stuff came into play here, had already been completely and totally consumed by you can call them the left, you can call them the cabal, you can call them whatever you want. But it's that negative force that is intended to and has literally consumed the people and all of their rights and their property. So let's list the first one, which is abolition of private property. Well, what are they trying to do? No more grants, no more land patents, no more allodium titles. The allodium is the foundation of the system here in land. And it originated in the European countries, but it doesn't apply in there to anything but the crown, and the crown doesn't need the allodium because the crown is the owner of all the land there. And in this country, the people own all the land here. And I don't care if it's a government building or private property, it belongs to the people. And there's these little things called treaties, which would be a contract or a claim or a lien or some posting where somebody decides they want to live in a certain place and they identify the property and post it, claim it, and wait to see if anybody wants to show up and say, no, that's not yours, I got there first, or whatever. And then the system wanted to eliminate all that, and which they did ultimately. But there are still people out there that are sitting on lands that are patents. And if you look, there's a map that I came across on the internet about the United States and how many states actually have land patents. And the whole the whole map was red with patents except for Texas. And I still haven't got a real clear idea about just why Texas apparently doesn't have any listing on that map, but it's irrelevant because the people are starting to wake up to what their real rights are. And that first one was to eliminate literally all the private property and to tax. Does it say tax or does it say rent? It said, and the application of all rents. Well, what's a rent in the eyes of a system that controls everything? It's a tax.
It's a tax.
Yeah. And they wanted to make it look like, oh, uh, we're just gonna make all the rents that are going to be used for the public purposes. Well, that can't be a rent. It's got to be a tax. So they're getting rid of the allodium or any reference to it. And the only thing in the system that is a taxable document when it comes to land is called a deed. And the deed is not the title. It's a color of title. And there's a few hundred cases that deal with this particular issue, uh, which is very simple. The title is not in a deed. That's a color. It doesn't identify the land according to its metes and bounds, its latitude, longitude, and it's taxable. The deed itself is taxable. So if you record a deed, you already got a tax obligation just with the deed. So that little piece of our land has been consumed by a communist principle, number one. So number two, a heavy progressive or graduated income tax. Well, where the heck did that come from? That tax happens to be an unconstitutional act of Congress because it was never given the power to create an income tax on the people. But through several legislative enactments and other things that are obvious in your face once you begin to see and understand who you are in the system and what they've identified you as, the Supreme Court even ruled about the 16th Amendment, which came in later, uh, that the 16th Amendment didn't change anything. And very pointed because the income tax, which had already been implemented, was on persons, U.S. citizens, officers, employees, and elected officials. It's in their own codes, and it had no application other than what was already listed. And so the 16th Amendment, as out of their mouth, didn't change a thing. No, the income tax is already in play, but there's still no constitutional authority for it. Zero. But they stuck it in there anyway because the Jesuits were and have been in control up to this point, or at least up to the point that Trump walked in the door. So, yeah, you can go down the list. You'll find out they're mandating public schools and just everything listed here, and on every one of these 10 planks is specifically related to something that the system has taken up in its rules, codes, regulations, and the people have just kind of fallen asleep in all of this and allowed it to happen, even though they may not like it. And of course, the ones that don't know how to go about addressing the system with respect to themselves, they got caught up in it and maybe went to jail or even worse. Depends on how far down that rabbit hole they were willing to go. Um, you'll notice centralization, that's number 6. Centralization of the means of communication and transportation in the hands of the state. Well, that means everybody has to get a license, and they're controlling what they can and can't say. Uh, Poof, talks about a real gag order there, but that's what's happened. And we get down there, see if there's another one that I could give you a simpleness on. Um, let's see, that's number 7 is the extension of faculties and instruments of production. They want to control everything that's being made, and that's one of the things that caused everything to be off continent or off our country, sent over to all these foreign countries. And I have somebody very close to me that was actually an executive individual in one of the big companies, and he spent quite a bit of time in China helping them to get their production all set up and everything so they could take over the production end of it. So, and we have number 8, which is equal. What is that one? I'm having trouble with the size of the
Equal
print.
obligation.
Yeah, of all to work and the establishment of industrial armies. Oh, sounds like a union thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And especially for agriculture, they wanted to control everything, and then they could repopulate the vegetables and fruits and everything that the people eat, including all the food that the animals eat that they use for their fodder. Uh, so that's a big one there. That led to the Monsanto and all the other kind of companies that are involved in all that real good, healthy stuff that they produce. Uh, the Yeah, in fact, the next one down, it says right there, the combination of agriculture with the manufacturing industries, gradual abolition of the distinction between town and county by a more equitable distribution of the population over the country. Wow, what the heck is that about? Well, you could turn everybody into a subject taxpayer across the board, and there's no divisions. They created the zip code, by the way. Uh, with, I don't know how many people actually know this, but it was an internal revenue act by the president. He signed the act, which actually created internal revenue taxing districts under the code. They called it a zoning improvement plan, ZIP. So these numbers that people put on every piece of mail, they've been led to believe that they have to use, is just more evidence of the fact that the government controls and mandates this allegiance to this monster that's in the background that regulates, controls, taxes everything going on in this country and in other parts of the world. So I mean, this thing has tentacles all over. Um, let's see, where's number 10 at here? Let me get down to number 10. Uh,
Free
Free
education.
education for all the children in government schools. Uh, oh my goodness. Well, what's that about? That's the indoctrination program. And it's intended to do one thing, just what it did. In fact, I've got some very intelligent people that I know who were indoctrinated all the way through college and everything with all of these communist ideals that you're reading about here in these 10 planks and a whole lot more. So everybody's been converted into things that is evidenced by this 10 planks of the Communist Manifest. And when they combined that law and equity under the civil code, they just created a whole rule that governed a bunch of subjects based on the government's ideas and what they wanted the people to know and how they wanted them to act. And I remember first day, this was back in the 80s, uh, my first law, so-called law books that I was prompted to get. Uh, California Code of Civil Procedure, California Civil Code, California Penal Code, uh, Political Code, and I'm like, holy mackerel, you wouldn't believe these codes and what they say and what they did. But I also got my hands on a lot of the first statutes at large, and there's a lot of truth statements that are made in there about freeholders and state citizens, and all. It's all in those documents. And for those that want to take the time to look all that up, it's all available. Nothing's hidden unless you just don't know want to go look in the library. A lot of it's been hidden on the internet. Um, Sometimes if you get acquainted with your local law librarian, uh, strike up a decent conversation, you might even get them excited enough to be looking into those early statutes, depending upon your state, whether it's a state or not, and that's another matter. There's going to be quite a, I'll say, a little bit of an upheaval when it comes to deciding who is a state and who isn't, and how it came to be, and maybe what they want to do to fix their constitution. And this is another big piece of this. All the original constitutions, I could probably go through and tell you all the little things that they wrote in the original 13 constitutions that maybe didn't quite suit the private side in our system. And as a result of that, they have created after the first 13, and you get into about around the 1802 version of some of these constitutions and thereabouts, you're going to find out that the really important words that were intended to identify the people who were going to be operating the systems, and I'm talking about the commercial side, they had to be freeholders and they had to be state citizens. So all this other hype and stuff you hear about out there is it's just totally irrelevant to the truth and the fact and the foundation of our system and how it was set up. And if you're not willing to take a little walk in history and read the stuff for yourself, you're going to be led down another garden path, I'll call it. But sooner or later, people are going to come together to find out the truth about all of this.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know how much more I can give you on
Well,
this little topic,
so
Todd.
do you want to go on down to and start take time to discuss how only a citizen of the state has standing to sue the state, and go into section 2 about the judicial power,
Sure.
and I'll just maybe I should tell you that RJ's on the line, and
Okay.
maybe give her a chance to ask a question about what we've covered so far.
All right.
I invited her in.
Okay.
I invited Salty too, but she hasn't made it.
Okay. That's all right.
I
So,
think Salt. I think RJ's just listening.
okay. That's okay. She's
Yes,
entitled.
yes. I'm just listening. I was just listening because I was told not to speak up during any of these calls. But
Who told
if
you that?
well, Salty said that was between Low Tide and Mason.
Oh, okay.
So
Well, that's all
so
right.
I didn't. So I didn't even join because I didn't want y'all to try to talk to me since I wasn't supposed
Well,
to be here.
oh, cut it out. So
Well,
anyway,
I know
this
I'm
top.
here. I'm here, and so
Okay.
if y'all want me to ask questions, I'd be glad to.
Well, I don't know. Do you have any? based on what you've heard so far, do you have any questions about the Communist Manifest and those
No,
goals?
I agreed. I started to answer all your questions just as you were giving them. Like the indoctrination and all that stuff. Yeah, I
Oh
I
yeah.
am I know all about all that stuff, and it's been going on forever, and it's not good.
Well, and see, most of that indoctrination had to do with all the, I'll just say, the unqualified individuals who were being literally invited into this country, and we were being taken over, just simple. And I don't know if you remember at some point where they were started to mandate that Mandarin be taught in the schools, and it was like, well, what the hell do we need to speak that language for? Well, the idea was that's what the language was going to be. They were going to literally get rid of the English language in this country as the primary. And if you think that they haven't almost accomplished that, they have. So this whole
I was just
takeover,
mention I was just mentioning to Salty about that just yesterday, I think, or the day
yeah,
before, around the election time. About it would be nice if we could just go back and have everything in English again
that's how
instead
it
of
was set
having it
up.
in multiple languages. But
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know if that'll ever happen.
well,
I
it's
just
happening.
chimed in to the
And
call. Why don't y'all record this? Why don't
I
you
am.
pick a topic and record it? Good morning,
I
everybody. Good
I
afternoon,
am.
everybody.
We're
afternoon.
this call's being recorded.
Oh, it doesn't. It doesn't show it. Oh, it is, and I screwed up. I'm so sorry. Oh,
That's okay.
it's it's about
Okay.
it's probably about 30 minutes old, Salty, but it is being recorded for your benefit, and he's on a roll.
all right. I'm gonna hit mute. Sorry, y'all. Continue on.
Yeah,
I'm
see,
just
I was
rolling.
same here, Salty. I was muted too until they mentioned my name.
Uh,
But
So
okay, well,
I think
we
it
got.
is all good information to cover all this communist stuff,
what
because it has every one of those things that you mentioned have been and they've been instituted through
Implemented.
yeah.
implemented, or well, somehow or
Yeah.
another they have implemented them, and it's not part of our constitution, I don't think, but they
Nope,
have
it's not.
definitely indoctrinated us to every one of them.
That's a fact.
So section two, if we pick it back up, I mean, I don't think it would take that long to cover the other half of this document that you posted,
Let me
and
get to it.
it would be very good.
Okay. Uh, I make this comment right there. Only a citizen of the state has standing to sue a state or the United States in the Supreme Court in an original action. I didn't put that in there. Okay. But that's what it says in, you go down to Article 2 or Section 2 of that. This is the actual wording and verbiage out of the Constitution itself. The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, the laws of the United States, and the treaties made, or which shall be made under their authority, to what? All cases affecting, and here's the cases, ambassadors, other public ministers, and consuls, to all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, to controversies to which the United States shall be a party, to controversies between two or more states, between a state and citizens of another state, between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state claiming lands under grants of different states, and between a state or the citizens thereof and foreign states, citizens, or subjects. Now, if you can show me somewhere in there where it was something other than a state citizen, citizen of a state, uh, I don't know where you'd find it, because it just listed everybody that had standing under Article 3, Section 2. and it didn't include anything not listed there specific. Now, what's the last part of this?
States, citizens, or subjects. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, there is no such
Nope.
thing as an American state national.
Yes.
Where are you going to find that?
Tell
I
me.
don't know. It's not here.
It's not. It's
So,
not in the Congress
so
not the. It's not
no.
in the Constitution, is it?
And I've gone through the Federalist Papers. The word citizen, I believe, is you can find it 206 times the word citizen there, but nowhere does it show up as a national. And I've looked at the word national in there, and there's no place where it turns up being subject to a citizen or connected with a citizen. There is no such thing. Now, this fictitious thing called a citizen of the U.S. is pretty obvious because there's court cases on that subject.
But it
And
does talk
one
about
of them,
citizen of the state.
the case I'm, oh, there's a whole bunch about state citizens.
Yes.
In fact, every case in our early history, down until the civil rights stuff got in place, uh, the justices actually go through the people and their standing in order to be a party to the case. And in all of those, they deal with a citizen of a state, whatever state they're a citizen of. It doesn't mention anything about some national thing. Nowhere. So the only place that I know it exists that my eyeballs have been placed on, and is that Title 8, which is immigration naturalization. And immigration naturalization has no authority under Title 8 dealing with citizenship because it only had the power to create a rule. It didn't have the power to naturalize. And when you go
Mm.
back and look at the first Naturalization Act, 1790, Congress was very slick in how they laid that out because they've been using that phrase citizen of the U.S. for a long time. And it actually was brought up in that particular first act. But guess what? You might have come in to become a citizen of the United States according to the act, but you know where you had to get naturalized? In a
The
state
state.
court of common law jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, if you're going to become naturalized in a state court, what would you be?
A
A
citizen of
citizen
the
of that
state.
state. That
Yes.
state. And the original statutes requiring the specifics of all that was that you were allowed to come in and take up temporary residency somewhere in the States 2 years before you apply for citizenship. And once you applied for citizenship, you had to have lived in the state where you're applying for 1 year. Then you apply to the superior court in your county where you're domiciled. So there's no complicated confusion about all this. It's just that the system has done everything it could to divide and conquer. And that's why we have all these ethnic entities living here among us. It wasn't about the people saying, yes, it's okay. It was about the government saying you have no choice.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
they've split us all up. They created this fictitious thing called a citizen of the U.S. And all these aliens that are now living here who think they have some standing have no standing. And the 14th Amendment didn't give anybody standing. It changed the qualifications and the status of the people from citizens of the state to citizens of the United States. It reversed everything. And there's some very powerful case law on that subject specific. So all this stuff you've been listening to all this time and all these things you're reading and all, you got all these splinter groups out there all over the place. And I'm not interested in mentioning them or talking about them. I'm just letting you know that the foundation and the words used are in the books. They're solid. The case law is solid. And so if you want to run off in some direction where you think you've got a chance to get something other than what everybody else is entitled to, go have fun with that. But the day is coming when all these things are going to come full circle on everybody. And you're going to find out, just like, our dream we talked about, who's your mom and dad? Well, yeah, well, you believe what you've been told, and that's where most people get all hung up in. Follow the facts. Let's go see where the facts lead us. So, state citizen is where the sovereignty is at. It's where it was at the revolution. It's where it is today. And if you think there's some miracle of legislative chicanery that might change that or give you some advantage where you may not have had it before, you're wrong. So this is about looking for your roots, and if you want to be part of the wake up, you know, there's no amount of information that isn't available to people who are really looking for truth. But the problem is most people don't have the right attitude that when they find it is to change that old dyed-in-the-wool opinion that they've been force-fed and led to believe. And some of them are willing to die to defend it. So, okay, that's okay. That's what the wheel's all about. So, some people will say, well, I'm not human in this life. Really? What are you? um, I got blood. I got bones. I got a body. Oh, I can even speak. I can understand some things I hear. Well, then what are you? Well, I don't know. How many different words can you use to define what you are? I don't know. You can pick one if you want, but everything I've learned, you're a human. So if you want something else, that's fine too. You're not going to change my understanding, literal, because I know what I know, and I get my answers from another place. I get confirmation when I need it, and I don't have to argue with somebody on a subject. I just leave them alone until they decide that they've either proved 1,000% that they're right, or maybe they got misled on their opinions. So anyway,
Well,
I don't know how much
that's
more we can deal with this.
well. This
Well,
has been informative, and
I,
I
I
would.
do have a question.
All right.
Okay.
This is Rjax again. Um, do you remember back when, right after, and some even before, Obama became president, there
Uh-huh.
were a lot of court cases that came about um, by citizens. Well, what we thought were citizens and who we thought would have standing in the courts, but yet they were all told they had no standing to bring these cases forward.
Okay. What do you
Do
think
you
that
know?
might
Do
have
you
been?
know anything? What do you know anything about that?
I,
Do you
I know what
remember all
standing
that?
is. I know what standing is, and I'm going to tell you something. Um, there have been people behind the scenes, let's just call them the white hats, who have been involved in this corrupt stuff for a very long time. And there have been also influential people at certain levels who also understood just exactly what we're talking about right now. And what is standing. And as far as I'm concerned, and my opinions on the subject, which may be proven out or not, doesn't really matter. That if you're not a citizen of a state, you don't have standing. There hasn't been a single person in the entire system, government, including the private sector, who were identified other than a citizen of the United States. So if you can't show me where that word appears in our founding documents, it's never been changed, by the way. You go look and see if that Article 3, Section 2 has been amended, if it's been amended to entertain some other status other than a citizen of the state. It's not there. So what's the problem? The problem is in the justice system where when the right person brought the right case, I did one of them, and all of a sudden the court's ready to hear it. I had standing because I did certain things that isolated me or changed me from what the government had created to what I truly am. And I had all the evidence in the exhibits. And the Supreme Court said, case filed, docketed, and we're going to set briefing schedules. And that's when the court below said, goodbye, get rid of this guy, get him out of here, we don't want this stuff out there. And that's what happened. So, yeah, I know all about standing. And the
So you're
system does
saying
too.
all of these people had that wanted to bring a court case against Obama, saying that he was not eligible. Um,
Uh-huh.
they needed to have a. They needed to change their standing or their who they
That's
were,
right.
or
They were not a qualified citizen according to the law.
in the particular court they were filing.
I don't care what court they file. If you got to be a state citizen to bring an action against the state or in some high level politically charged set of circumstances, you better have standing. And if the court doesn't want to deal with you, you'll know.
Yeah,
yep,
And
they.
believe me, the courts have all been impacted for the most part. But that doesn't mean there weren't some ringers along the way. Scalia was one of them. Now, whether he's dead or not, I don't know. I know there's been a lot of, we'll say, witness protection programs and so on. So, even though they went through all that stuff and showed him being, covered up by a pillow or something,
yeah.
I believe about 1/10 of what I'm told, and less than that about what I see.
They only tell you what they want you to know.
That's correct. And if you can't see something beyond that, if you don't know how to go ask the question from your own internal and wait for the answer, it'll come. Especially if you're involved in things that would be relevant to the question.
Yeah.
That's the nature of us. We're very, 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 we're the most powerful element in the universe. We have access to everything and we create everything. So, what about that?
So you're telling me about the standing stuff that they basically redefined who we were, apparently, since we don't have standing.
That's right.
Because we were born in the state that we were born in,
That's right.
and they basically changed who we were and said, we don't have standing because they said we
That's a
didn't.
fact. And the more pointed part of it, they didn't change you. They created this fictitious entity, and everybody decided that they wanted to be identified accordingly.
Well, we didn't know any better.
Can't help that. There were people out there. There were people out there who knew about this, but when they got up and opened their big mouth to the public, they found themselves on the other side of the grave. 6 feet
Right,
under.
absolutely. Yeah,
And I know quite a few of those people.
yeah.
So if you didn't learn that, it wasn't timing. This whole thing is about timing. Everything in the universe has its own time, and it affects everything and everybody in it. And you're gonna get to go through the steps, whether you like it or not, and you'll learn along the way what you should or shouldn't do, and it'll be given any specific topic that might come to you. And until you know what the rules are, you're going to get kicked around and beat up and have all kinds of experiences until you figure it out. And we're coming into that time right now where there's some very important rules that you might want to look at. And number one is you can give information out to anybody who's asking for it. Don't be afraid, but don't go out there and try and tell somebody that isn't interested in it what he should be thinking.
Right.
That's the other side of it. So this is real it's a simple guideline. And spirit, the universe will always bring those to you who want to know truth, and it knows that you might have the truth for them to get. And so they wind up in your face somehow, and you don't have to go hunt for them. That's the amazing part about this. And it's a hard lesson for some people. These amazing time right now with all these great calls and information is flowing like water, including the structured water. I had the Geisinger professor on the call this morning for about an hour and a half, and he's the last thing we touched on before we parted was he wanted to know about this structured water, and he's a professor at UCLA, a chemistry professor of all things, and he's got some of the most phenomenal wine, including ciders that you're going to come across. And he's a natural at what he does, and he's all about the private side, even though he does have a license and does stuff according to the business rules. But that'll all change, and he knows it.
Well, I wanted to ask you a question about that too. The water, the one that you were telling us about the last time we were on a call, about your horses liked it and your plants all liked it, and it was using crystals or something to filter with. And I was just wondering, will that work in our house and we can just drink that water if it goes through that filter?
Let me explain now.
Well,
This device
explain
is,
okay. What I'm asking is, will it get things like fluoride out of our water?
yes,
That's great. That's just one of the worst
neutralizes,
things.
it neutralizes all the chemicals that are in your water. It changes the
Wow.
frequencies so they're no longer harmful. Now you can
Wow.
put filter on if you want. You can put a carbon block in there. You can throw in some really high price sediment filters and stuff. But the end result is what comes out from this device. And the device is a one-time purchase. You don't have to replace it. It's got crystals in it. So let's just say it's got crystal technology. And it changes the water from H2O to H3O. And one of the hydrogen atoms is changed in the bond angle of the cells, or if you want to call it that, of the water, or molecules. And when that happens, the water becomes completely and totally absorbable into whatever it is you put it on. You put it in your radiator of your car. I mean, there's so many different things that this water will have an effect over. You can't even imagine. But the number one, the most important thing is you. And then, of course, what follows along with this is maybe a little water fasting and try to move away from the animal protein stuff and try to stay more focused towards the organic foods. Get away from as much of the chemical stuff as possible. But the point remains is that your system is how much water? What's the percentage? 60%, 70%,
65%.
whatever it
65 is
is.
what I heard. Yeah.
Okay, so all that water you got in you right now is contaminated based on what you drink and eat. So once you start to get a little bit of an idea about what I'm talking about, go on the website, just look at the website and read all the stuff that they got on there, because he's got a whole bunch of testimonials and other things. And some of the real life experiences that the people that buy this unit have had is an increase in their crop yield. Now, that doesn't mean this is the magic elixir that no matter what else you do in life, that if you just run this water on your crops, you're going to be 100%, because there's some other principles that go along with this. But the most important part is that it hydrates whatever you put it on, including you. And if you can fast for a period, 5 days is usually a really good heavy fast, because that gives your body's immune system the opportunity in about 3 days to start turning its focus on the things that you're shoving in your mouth and looking at the things that it's got access to that's already been in your body, that it's now going to start looking at to get rid of. And that's all the chemicals and everything else that you've ingested. So you talk about an in-home remedy, a cure. Well, this would be the coup de grace to start with. All you got to do is convince somebody to stop shoving stuff in their mouth drink the water. If you want to add some colloidal minerals to it, that's fine. But make sure that they're not taken from some other source that's got other contaminants. You know,
Well,
and there are
I've
available.
already gotten rid of a lot of chemicals out of my whole house. No cleaning things
Yeah,
that are
yeah,
chemicals.
oh
Laundry
yeah,
detergent is not chemicals.
yeah.
Everything in my bathroom, there's nothing that
Mm-hmm.
has chemicals in it or aluminum or any of that stuff. I've gotten rid of all of that. Um,
That's great.
I have cleaned up a lot, but the water was the main thing that I was having a problem with. And I've got a filter, a gravity fed filter with ceramic filtering it, but
Yeah, I know about those.
but that doesn't get all the fluoride out.
It
That's the
doesn't
problem.
change. It doesn't change the frequency of the
No,
toxin.
no, it doesn't. Mm-mm.
See, and that's what this device does. Just that. So it
Well, I wonder.
neutralizes.
I can probably get one of those and put it on my just attach it to my kitchen sink.
You can have one under sink, or you can just get the big boy, put it on your house, and you got the whole house.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we
I'll
did
definitely
exactly what
get
you're
one.
we did exactly what you're talking about. We I got the under sink. Is everybody still there? We dropped the call.
No, we're still here. Can you not
Okay, I
hear
heard.
us?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I heard what looked like somebody dropped the call.
Oh, okay.
I don't
No,
know
it's
if it
still
was
going.
Todd or Salty. Okay. Anyway, we did what you're talking about. We got an under sink unit, and then I bought a portable unit, which you can take it in a restaurant and pour the bottled water, whatever you get from the restaurant, pour it through the unit. It does the same thing to it.
Wow, that's
And then you can
great.
get, yeah, and then you can just, if you want to get the whole house unit, I'm thinking the whole house unit's like about 1,400 or something like that.
I think it's what I was looking at that too. It was like 1800, seventeen
Oh,
ninety
okay.
nine.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But
Because you
see,
don't
it's the
want all
one.
that water. You don't want all that bad water going in your shower or soaking in a
No,
tub because it
exactly.
goes
Or
right
running
into
down the
your
sink.
body. Yeah, it goes
Exactly.
right into your body. Yeah.
So when you finally decide that you're looking to really clean up good, that's the first step I'd take.
Yeah.
So
And if you
that's
get the whole
phenomenal.
house one, then you don't need to worry about, your laundry or your bathroom
That's right. Well, remember
your
that
kitchen
the
or
water.
anything.
I asked the question, well, how far a distance does this water have to go before it loses its structure? And depends on the diameter of the hose, depends on the material that it's running through, whether it be copper or PVC or stainless steel, or and depending upon the size of the unit that you're running the water through, which is why they make different sizes for different lengths, distances, and what you're doing with it. If you got a farm or something, you may have two or three of these units, spread around so that the structure water will maintain itself till it gets to the end where it's supposed to go. Because if you run it too far and through the wrong material, it'll lose its structure, go back to its normal condition. Poison. so
So if you
but
have
see,
a 100-foot hose for your garden, would it work?
oh yeah,
Okay.
and I don't remember all of his technical uh, definitions of all the distances, the size, the hose, the quantity, the type of material, all that. It's on his website. And if you can't get it there, you can get in touch